So we are now going to prepare a little bit for Pesach, the upcoming Yom Tov, and also connect it into tefillah of how and what we should be davening for as we enter into the month of Nisan, and in particular to the month of Pesach, to the night of the Seder, which we'll hopefully have another shir before then, but the night of the Seder is by far the holiest night of the year. It's a night where there's tremendous hashpa'os, as we call them, spiritual energies to grab onto that can change a person's life if he prepares properly and fulfills all the mitzvahs of the night properly, which is the most important thing, is fulfilling the mitzvahs properly. So first, we just want to understand every Yom Tov. Before you enter into the Yom Tov, you have to understand the nature of that specific Yom Tov. There's many amazing events that happened throughout Jewish history that did not become Yomim Tovim. Many miraculous victories and unbelievable salvations, and they're not Yomim Tovim. You don't celebrate them every single year. The ones that actually became a Yom Tov, and certainly from the Shalosh Regalim, so it's an indicator that those are bigger than the event itself. The way we explained it another time, and we'll explain it again, is that those events, the spiritual energy preceded the event. Meaning the event was only a manifestation and an indicator that something big was happening in the spiritual worlds on that date at that time, and that it cycles back every single year on that same date, on that time. As the Sfas Emes says, that we say, Bayamim Hahem Bazman Hazeh. Like when we say, Sha'asa Nisim Lavoseinu, Bayamim Hahem Bazman Hazeh. That Hashem did miracles for our forefathers, Bayamim Hahem, in those days, Bazman Hazeh. In this time. So what does that mean? It means he did the miracles in those days, but what enabled those miracles to happen was this time period that hits every year on this circular cycle of the Jewish calendar. So those spiritual energies that made the miracles then, you hit them every year at that same date. And that's the indicator. So a way to look at it that the Ramchal says is, we know that Avram Avinu and Lot even were eating matzah on Pesach. They were eating matzah on Pesach. It says that Lot served the angels matzah, and Rashi says that it was Pesach time. And he learned it from Avram that you eat matzah on Pesach. But the whole reason that we eat matzah is because they had to leave Mitzrayim in haste. They didn't have time to let the dough rise. Well, guess what? That didn't happen yet. Right? Avram Avinu lived before Yetzias Mitzrayim. So what in the world was he celebrating? You know, what's Pesach? Pesach is Yetzias Mitzrayim, but that didn't happen yet. So how could there be a Yom Tov of Pesach before Yetzias Mitzrayim? Answer is that Yetzias Mitzrayim was just a manifestation of the spiritual energy called Pesach. Pesach happens every year on the 15th of Nisan. That happens regardless of if the Jews left Mitzrayim or not. The koach, the spiritual force that brought the Jews out of Mitzrayim, was available on that date, and that's what got them out of Mitzrayim. Not to save the Jewish people and got them out of Mitzrayim. So every year you hit that date, so you get that spiritual energy. So it exists before the event, and certainly it exists after the event. It climaxes on the event itself. Of course, that's when the full spiritual energy came into the world in full bloom. And then every year, you get the ripple. You get the ripple effect of that event. And it's really that spiritual energy you tap into. So since Pesach is the birth of a nation, so we know that it occurs every year as Chag HaAviv. It occurs in the spring. So the secular observer would say, how nice that the holiday that represents the birth of the nation takes place when all the flowers come back to life and the trees come back to life. It's a nice coincidence that when the world comes back to life, the Jewish people are born and came into being and come back to life. So that person would have it backwards. The reason that the spring takes place is because the spiritual energy that brings the world back to life comes into the world at that time. And that's why Pesach is always going to hit at that time, because that same spiritual energy that brings the trees back to life is what brings the Jewish people back to life. It's the same energy. It just manifests itself one way by being spring as a season. Another way, it's a holiday. That's why we're very makbid in the Jewish calendar to always ensure that the Jewish holidays fall out in their proper season. You need Pesach to be Chag HaAviv, and therefore you always need to add an extra Adar every 3 years or so to make sure that you push the dates to the right season, because the Jewish calendar is 354 days and the secular calendar is 365, so you have 11-day gap. So, right, every 3 years, you're 33 days behind. So you add a month, 30 days, and it pushes you back into the right season. Whereas the Arabs, the Muslims who also follow a lunar calendar, don't add the month, and therefore Ramadan can fall out in the summer, in the winter, in the spring, whatever it is, because their calendar is always going to be falling behind. And then, every, 50, 60 years, whatever, it'll catch up. But we catch up every 3 years. So this is because we need our Yomim Tovim to align with the seasons, because that's the spiritual energy that's enabling the Yom Tov to take place. That's what you're kind of tapping into. So that's in the general sense for every Yom Tov. Now, every Yom Tov, therefore, you have to ask yourself, what is the unique spiritual energy that is taking place on this particular Yom Tov? And usually a good indicator is what's happening in the agricultural cycle during that time, which we're a little bit disconnected from today. But every Yom Tov had an agricultural name. Chag Asif, right? It was Sukkot, when they would gather in the grain, to when they would plant the grain. Every Yom Tov had to do with the agricultural cycle. So today you can look at nature, what's taking place. Is it spring? Is it winter? Right? Hanukkah takes place in the winter when the days are short and the nights are long and it's very dark. So the miracle is lighting a candle to light the darkness. Each Yom Tov will fit with the season, and also with the theme will fit with the season. So what is, in particular by Pesach, we want to understand what's the nature of Pesach. So we look at the season, like we said, it's rebirth, rejuvenation. But if you had to put into one word, so what's the one word theme of Pesach? Because like Sukkot is Simcha, I gave it away. So in Hebrew, what do we say? Cherus. So it's Cherus, freedom. So Cherus is Pesach. That's what it is. Pesach is freedom. So the problem is that's an English word, and we need a Hebrew Torah definition. So you can't just use the word Cherus. We need to know what that means. Cherus, freedom. So if you look at what took place in the storyline, so it's actually very much the opposite of a secular version of freedom. You had the Jewish people who are literally enslaved. Okay, fine, so far so good, right? Because you want freedom, so you have to start with slavery. So they were enslaved, which means every second of every day was controlled by another being. The Mitzrim, the Egyptians, controlled their entire lives from the moment they woke up until the moment they went to sleep. The Mitzrim controlled everything, even birth quotas, right? They controlled everything. And Hashem broke them free of that shibud, as we call it. The Mitzrayim was called Meitzarim. It was like constricting them and binding them. They couldn't move, right? They were completely controlled by another person. So they were removed from that terrible, terrible existence. They were taken into the desert, and then they were made slaves to Hashem. Avadaihem, Hashem says, they're my slaves. They're my slaves. So basically, it's like a master. Imagine you were, think back to when there was slavery in the United States, and there was a slave owner, and he owned a bunch of these Africans that they stole from Africa, and then there's another slave owner comes and steals the slaves and makes them his slaves. So would they celebrate that as a day of freedom? So probably not. They're still slaves. They're just slaves to a different master. In fact, the Torah is probably more all-encompassing than their Egyptian slavery. Literally every aspect of life is dictated by Hashem what you have to do. You have to do every second of every day. Then you have a lot of responsibilities, a lot of do's, a lot of don'ts. There's holidays, there's Shabbos, there's all these different things that Hashem says you have to live according to these rules. And if you don't, you are going to be punished in this world and the next world. You're also going to be punished just like you were by the Mitzrim, except this master has a lot more ways to punish you. So it's even more scary that he has even more control over you because you can't escape him. Now, in Mitzrayim, they also couldn't escape. It says there was a certain magical force field that the Mitzrim built that no slave could ever escape Mitzrayim. But Hashem is even better than that. There's no way to escape. People say, I converted to Christianity. I'm not Jewish anymore. It doesn't work like that. There's a famous story with the Gra when he was speaking with an apostate, a Jew that had converted and that wasn't religious anymore. And the person was a government official, and he came to meet with the Vilna Gaon for some reason. And when he was, and they served him drinks, so the person was about to take a sip, and the Gra said, "Don't forget to make a bracha." So the guy started laughing. He said, "Rabbi, I don't think you understand. Like, I'm an apostate. I'm not even. I converted out. I'm a heretic. You think I'm going to make a bracha?" And he said, "Well, you're still going to be held accountable for not making that bracha." So the person evidently that shook him, that he said like, what? Like he realized the Gemara says that you're still 100% Jewish and you're going to be held accountable for everything. Just because you checked out doesn't mean you checked out. Hashem is the master and he's going to be the master whether you check in or check out. And the person evidently was Chazar b'tshuva. The story goes that from that incident he realized that he had never checked out. He just decided on his own, oh, I'm not a slave anymore. It doesn't work like that. Hashem's still the master. So to say that we went from one slavery to another slavery is very strange. To say that's freedom. If you gave a secular definition, that would not be freedom. Freedom is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Probably. So you have life, so nobody can kill you or hurt you. So Hashem doesn't guarantee you that. Hashem controls your life, right? Liberty, so you have freedom to do what you want. You don't really have freedom to do what you want. The pursuit of happiness. So if you want to go, if your definition of happiness does not align with the Torah, you don't have freedom to pursue that. You could try, but you'll probably fail, and Hashem's going to deny you the happiness. So it sounds like you don't really have a secular definition of freedom. You can't really do what you want. Freedom, if you think freedom means I can do whatever I want, so you can't do whatever you want. Hashem, you could, but you're going to be punished for it. Just like a slave could do whatever he wants, but he's going to have to pay the consequences if he tries to pull that off. So how could Hashem tell us that this is the Yom Tov of freedom when it's the Yom Tov of becoming a slave to Hashem? So that's our question. So you probably already can think of different ways to answer it within the question is making assumptions. But from the secular definition of freedom, it's a real question that you don't seem to have freedom. So therefore now we need to understand, so what's the Jewish definition of freedom? And then we'll understand what it is, why this Yom Tov is the Yom Tov of Cherus. And more importantly, when we understand the definition of Jewish freedom, so then we understand what it is that we can tap into and in our own lives that Pesach can create something new for us. It can free us from something, because every year freedom is on the table for Nisan during that month, and especially on Pesach itself. And then Hashem takes it off the table until next year, because that's when the spiritual energy is available. If you take it while it's there, if you don't, you missed it. So we have to understand what it is that's there and what we're supposed to be davening for, how we're supposed to be connecting to it. So that's this question of freedom. So we'll start with, you know what? I had my sheet, I'm going to have to remember it by heart. My sheet had some English on the bottom that I wrote. But I wrote my definition of freedom, which I think is a very important definition of freedom. I think I said it once in a drasha before, but it's a very good definition of freedom. It's not my own. It was a person in my kollel gave a chabura on this topic of freedom, and he gave the best definition I ever heard. I said, wow, like that was it. He thought about it for like many hours, went through sources, then he said he came up with his definition, and I said, this is perfect. Like, it's exactly what it is. So his definition of freedom, and if I can remember, I'm just going to kind of start saying the words and hope that it comes out, but it's the unhindered ability to choose that which is in your eternal best interest. So, say it again, the unhindered ability, so nothing... Yeah, sure. Yeah. The unhindered ability to choose that which is truly in your eternal best interest. That's what I think it is. Okay? Because many people, they have the ability to choose what they want to do, but that thing that they want to do might be extremely detrimental to them. So that person is not free. Someone take the whistle, just if it keeps happening. But just ask if you can take the whistle. That person's not really free, because he can't really choose what's in his best interest. Let's even take it to a secular point of view, if it's not religious. If a person is addicted to cigarettes, so does he have the freedom to smoke cigarettes? Yeah, he's in America. It's a free country, America. Right? You can do what you want. You can smoke cigarettes. But if he's addicted to cigarettes, so he knows that he doesn't want to be smoking these cigarettes because he's probably going to die earlier than he would if he didn't smoke cigarettes. And yet, he's smoking them. So from the secular definition, maybe we'd say he's free to choose to smoke cigarettes, right? But he's not free because he's a slave to his addiction. Any addiction that a person knows they're addicted, they're basically slaves to that behavior. They're a slave to that behavior because they don't want to be doing that thing. They know it's detrimental to their health or to whatever it is, and they can't stop. So they're enslaved to their behavior. So that's a very good definition of slavery, where it doesn't align. You're free, you can do whatever you want, but he's not free. That person is the worst type of slave. He can't do that. So that's a terrible position for a person to be in. So really, true freedom is only when first of all you have all of the facts and the information that is true on the table. Because if you are living a life where you are told to do something, or that something is what you should be pursuing, that is not in your eternal best interest, you're not free. Because this person says, you know how you are going to be happy in life if you make a lot of money. That's a definition of how you'll be happy. He'll tell you that is how you're going to be happy. So you spend your whole life trying to make money. The guy has $1 billion, and the end of his life, his kids hate him, and he's divorced 6 times, and he's completely miserable. So was he free his whole life? No, because he was working under false pretense. Someone had told him something that is absolutely not true. So he's not free because his whole life he's pursuing something that's false. So anytime that media or society is going to try to tell a person that this is what they should be chasing in life, and they are actively pursuing that thing, so then they're not free, because they're a slave to misinformation. That's another way you could be a slave. You could be a slave, and today it's more than ever. A lot of people are slaves to misinformation. So that's a crazy thing, because the person is like chasing after something that is not in his eternal best interest, or even in his short-term best interest. And even in this world, leave aside Olam Haba, because that'll be a separate discussion for Jews. But even if in your current best interest, if you're told something and it's not true, so you're now a slave. You're a slave to something because you're doing something that is not what you really truly want to be doing, and you don't even know it. So that is the Jewish definition of freedom. Is also the secular definition of freedom. This is what it should be. Freedom is when you are free to pursue that which is in your best interest. Now, Jewish definition is in your eternal best interest, which means that in your short term, it might not be in your best interest. Someone puts a gun to your head and says, worship Avodah Zarah, or I will shoot the gun. So in your temporary best interest is probably to bow down to the idol, because you don't want to die. But in your eternal best interest is to take the bullet, because then you'll have an unbelievable Olam Haba, and you'll die al pi Kiddush Hashem, and that's what you have to do, because that's one of the 3 averos that you have to give up your life for. So that means that you now are free. You're not a slave, because you know exactly what is in your eternal best interest. That knowledge in and of itself is freedom. That's the definition of freedom, because if you don't have all the facts on the table, so you're a slave to misinformation, you could be spending your whole life pursuing something and putting effort into something that is futile. So you're a slave to that thing, because you're working, and it's not getting you to where what's in your best interest. Freedom means I'm doing what's best for me. For me, in the eternal sense is the Jewish definition, or even in the secular sense, in this world's definition, what's in your best interest. So it's a very true definition of freedom that this person came up with. Michael Avrami Sinclair is his name. It's a very true definition, and that's a definition that we have to use. So now, if you have that as a definition, so then we can understand a lot more what freedom is all about. So look at source number 6. We'll go backwards in terms of the order of the sources. So the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, Amri Yeshua ben Levi, and then we'll skip down to the bold. She'ein lecha ben chorin ela mi she'osek b'talmud Torah. So there is no such thing as a ben chorin, as a free man, unless it's a person who's osek in Torah. That's the only way you could be free. So according to our definition, that's perfect, because a prerequisite to being free is having all the facts and the information on the table. If you don't know what true eternal life is about, what's going to happen at the end of the game, right? If you don't know, meaning if someone's smoking cigarettes when they're 14, and let's say it was before they knew that cigarettes were dangerous, so they don't know what's going to happen at the end of the story. They don't know that this thing is very bad for them. So they think they're free to smoke cigarettes, but they have misinformation. So they're doing something that's detrimental to their health the entire time. They think they're free, but they're really a slave to being addicted. And in the end, they're going to tremendously regret it and say, oh my gosh, I was a slave my whole life to misinformation. So you need to know the truth in order to be free. Then they say that the truth will set you free. Right? So it's true. The truth will set you free, because without the truth, you're a slave to whatever ideology was fed to you. So let's see the Yachin is a famous old commentary in Pirkei Avos. So he says, let's see how he defines this line, that it's impossible to be a ben chorin ela mi she'osek b'talmud Torah. Source number 7. Shirak hu eino mishtabed V'gam eina mishubad legufanius. Because only he, the one that is osik in Torah, the one that learns Torah, is not mishtabed, he's not subjugated. And eino mishubad legufanius, and not subjugated to his physical pleasures and desires. Now we're going to take it a layer that gets much deeper. Because even something within the person himself, not just misinformation, there's something within him himself that's trying to trick him and feed him lies. In his whole life, there's something inside of him that's trying to trick him and kill him. Essentially, he's trying to kill him. That's what Chazal say. Literally trying to kill him. This is freedom. That the soul is not enslaved to the body, to the guf, to physicality. That's the only true freedom. But not when his taivos are free, and here's the American definition of freedom. My taivos are free, and my soul is a slave to my physical desires. That's the opposite of freedom. But in the secular world, they'll tell you that is freedom. To drink what you want, to eat what you want, to do what you want, they'll tell you that's freedom, but that's actually slavery, because you're a slave to something else. What are you a slave to? So look at source number 2. Amar Rava, betchila karo helech, ulbasof karo orech, ulbasof karo ish. So the Gemara in Sukkah is darshaning a pasuk in Mishlei, I believe, and the pasuk says that there's someone who is in the beginning is a helech, he's like passing through, he's a traveler. Then he becomes an oreach, a guest, and then he becomes an ish, he becomes the balabais, he becomes the owner of the home. So who is this person? So the Gemara says it's the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara, first he just like visits, he tells you to do something, once in a while, every now and then. Then he becomes a guest, you start doing it a little more often, and then he becomes a balabais, and that becomes who you are, that becomes what you do. You become a slave to that behavior. Look at source number 3. How does he do it? So it's very important to know the tricks of the Yetzer. It says, Amar Ravasi, Yetzer Hara betchila doma lechut shel buchya. In the beginning, he looks like a spider web. Super thin, I could break right through it. Okay, it's annoying, it's like on my face. And like, but I'll pull it off in 2 seconds. What's the big deal? So I'll give in to him a little bit. He's not so strong. He can't really get me. Like, okay, once in a while I'll slip up. Basof, but in the end, doma ka'avosos ha'agala. He's like, what are avosos ha'agala? Those are the thick ropes that would harness onto the horse or onto the wagon, that hold the wagon, and you can't break out of it. Like the horse tries to break out of those ropes, he's not going anywhere. He owns that horse, right? Those ropes own that wagon. It's not going anywhere. So Rashi says, Labasof, in the end, Misha Adam nimshach acharav ma'at. If he goes after him a little bit when the strings are still thin, Misgaber b'holechbo, becomes behaviorally ingrained and rooted in the person, and he can't break out of it after that. So the Yetzer Hara starts with these thin little spider webs, and then eventually it becomes ropes, which we said Meitzarim, Mitzrayim, Egypt, comes from the Lashon Meitzarim, which is to be bound and strapped in. So he's bound and strapped in. So that's what the Yetzer Hara does to a person, that there's an internal mechanism. Let's leave aside misinformation and that society is trying to trick a person, so he can even push that out. But he has something internal that is literally trying to kill him and trying to trick him and control him and enslave him at every chance that it gets. So there's a 2-front battle. There's an external battle with the entire world that's telling you things that are fake and false and having you chase things that are not real and not true and that are not in your eternal best interest. So first you have to block all of them out, and then you turn the camera inside. But then there's a problem, because inside, so you say, okay, so I don't listen to the world. I use my own brain. I think for myself. I don't trust the world. Good. But inside your brain, there's also a little guy, a little devil on the shoulder, that's also trying to trick you. And that's trying to have you chase things that he's going to tell you, it's in your best interest, go for it, it's going to work out well, you're going to enjoy yourself, you need a break, you need to do this every now and then, it's stifling if you don't, it's about the long run, you'll win the marathon if you just do this a little bit. There's so many ways that he could trick you. He knows you better than you know yourself, because he is you to a certain extent. And all day, every day, he's trying to get the person to become a slave to him and to what he's trying to trick the person into doing. So what's the only way to break out of it? There's only one way out. So look at source number 5. So look from the bold in the middle. Kach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar Lahem LeYisrael. Hashem said to Klal Yisrael, Banai, Barasi Yetzer Hara. I created a Yetzer Hara, and he's very, very strong, and he knows you better than you know yourself. Barasi lo Torah Tavlin. But I created Torah. Tavlin literally means as a spice. So let's see. Most people will translate it as an antidote, or a remedy, but we'll see how we can understand it also as a spice. But for now, we'll say it's an antidote. V'im atem oskim b'Torah, and if you learn Torah, ein atem nimsarim beyado, then you won't be handed over to him. You'll be able to always catch him. Because if he tells you something, but the Torah tells you something else, so you know he's lying. Even if it looks really convincing, even if it looks really good, but you know he's lying, and then you'll be able to break through. So it says, and he says, Shenemar, halo im teitiv se'es. If you get better, then you'll be able to withstand. But he says, Hashem says, I guarantee you, if you're not Isaac in Torah, if you don't learn and delve and work in Torah, so then you're handed over to him. You got no chance. His only focus in life is you. Meaning, a lot of people in business, they have like 20 different customers. So, they like to give you attention sometimes, but sometimes they're pulled in different directions. They're busy. They have a lot of things to deal with. You have a little chip inside of you, a little person inside of you. He's got one job. Just you. Full attention all day. Sounds so nice. Hey, he's such a nice guy. You have a good relationship with him because you get full attention. He's never on a cell phone. He's never distracted. He works 24/7. Right? He's always available for you. So that's what he does all day. But if you want, you can rule over him. It doesn't just say you can beat him and you can get rid of him. You can rule over him. See what that means? It means you can harness him. You can use him. He's trying to use you. If you're smart and you learn Torah, you will be able to use him for your avodas Hashem. You'll be able to turn the tables. Rabbi Shimon ben Levi, every single day, don't think there's a day where Yetzer Hara takes vacation. No vacation days. Every single day, he's trying a new way to get you to just slip up in this area, relax in this area, take a break in that area. This one's not so serious. Don't worry about it. That guy also does it. Everybody does it. So he's trying every day to find a new angle. And if Hashem didn't help you, ein yachalo. So that's a very important line. You would not be able to defeat him. Meaning, he's inherently stronger than you. Not only is he there 24/7, he works 24/7. Right? It's one thing if you're fighting a guy, you're battling a guy, and okay, you need to take breaks, but he goes 24/7. But you're stronger than him. So bottom line is when you do pick up the sword and fight, you know you're going to win. It's just that he doesn't get tired. Okay, that's already a hard battle. But he's also stronger than you. So even when you pick up the sword, derech hateva, you can't beat him, but Hashem is going to help you. Hashem wouldn't help you, you wouldn't be able to defeat him. Hashem's going to help you. But Hashem says you need Torah. That's your sword, that's your shield. If you have Torah, I'm going to help you, and you'll be able to beat him, and you'll be able to rule over him. Be able to rule over him. So why can't we just get rid of this guy? Do we want to kill him and shecht him? L'asi lavo, they're going to shecht him. So look at source number 1. Okay. Rabbi Nachman bar Shmuel bar Nachman b'shem Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman Amar. V'hinei tov me'od. So at the end of Ma'aseh Bereshis, Hashem finishes creating the whole world, and everything's done and perfect, and it says, V'hinei, behold, it's tov me'od. It's very good. Now, tov, when Hashem says something is tov, can't get better than that. That's 100%. That is perfection to the greatest extent possible. So that's tov, right? When your Hebrew teacher gave you a tov, it's like B-. Tov me'od, B+, metzuyan, A+. So here you got, tov is A+. Tov me'od is like beyond description. That Hashem says, this is so good, I'm amazed I even came up with something so good. Because it's beyond perfect. It's beyond, what does that mean? Tov me'od. It's greater than perfect. So what is this thing that's tov me'od? Says the Gemara, we hear the Medrash, Ze Yetzer Hara. This is the Yetzer Hara. The greatest thing Hashem ever invented was the Yetzer Hara. That's his greatest invention. No, it's the Shechina, it's the Beis HaMikdash, it's the Yetzer Tov. No, Yetzer Hara is better than all of that. Yetzer Hara Tov Me'od. So the Medrash asks, the Yetzer Hara is good? Forget, is it even Tov? But it's like Tov Me'od. Is it very, very good? Better than perfect? Ella, so what does it mean? She'ilula Yetzer Hara, if you didn't have a Yetzer Hara, lo bana adam bais, nobody would build any houses. V'lo nasa isha, nobody would get married. V'lo holy, no one would have kids. V'lo nasa v'nasa, no one would go into business. Everybody would just be lazy, sitting back, relaxing. The Yetzer Hara, what does that mean? So let's just define the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara isn't a psychotic voice inside it that says kill, kill, destroy, destroy. It sounds like the Yetzer Hara tells you build, build. Make a name for yourself. Build, compete. Reach the highest level of achievement possible. Maximize your potential. The Yetzer Hara is what it says here is the Yitzhar is like an engine. Now, if he's attached to the goof, which he is, so he's an engine telling you, get as much physical pleasure and as much ego and kavod as you can. That's his goal. Kavod, v'taiva, v'kina. That's what he's going for, jealousy and kavod and desire. But he's not an evil engine. If he's left untethered, he's a physical engine. So he's going to go after physical things that make you feel good, or even kavod that makes you feel good. But he's, bottom line, just an engine. What does it mean, Torah tavlin? Barati Yetzirah, barati Torah tavlin. I made Yetzirah, I made Torah as its spice. What do spices do if you're a good chef? Not a chef that you taste the spices. Spices are supposed to bring out the flavor of the food. So you taste that you're eating a steak. You don't taste like some restaurants, it's just Chinese food. You just put MSG and great sweet and sour sauce, and you're eating sweet and sour sauce with like a crunchy base. You don't really taste chicken, you don't taste anything. But if you have a real chef at a real restaurant, so every dish you'll be like, wow, your palate will be like, I taste the subtleties of this and the subtleties of that. I taste the meat, I taste the fried onions, I taste the sauce here a little bit, taste everything. So a chef is someone who learns how to take spices and draw out flavors. That's what a chef is. So Torah is the spice of the Yitzhara. It's using the Yitzhara properly. It's drawing out the positive aspects of the Yitzhara, which is motivation, which is goal. It says, Kina is bad. Kina means jealousy. Jealousy is bad. Torah says, but there's one jealousy that's really, really good. What's it called? Which is the good jealousy? Kinas sofrim. When you're jealous of a Talmud Chacham, that's very good. If you see a Talmud Chacham, you're blown away. You say, I want to become like that. Even if it's jealous, because I want to be that plugged into Torah, that connected to Hashem, that's the best thing possible. Because you just harnessed that jealousy, and now you harnessed it in a positive direction, saying that jealousy is going to make me into a Talmud Chacham. If you didn't get jealous about that guy and said, he's amazing, but I'm nothing like him, I'll never be like him, I'm a loser. So then you didn't harness your Yetzirah. You just said, I would like to be like that, but it's impossible. But no, you use your Yetzirah, saying, I want to be that. I'm going to become like that guy. One day I'm going to look like him. I'm going to be like him. I'm going to have everyone in the room stand up. Now you shouldn't learn Torah for that sake, but it's saying you're harnessing it for something that's eventually going to hopefully turn you in the right direction. You have to do it with pure intentions. I want to be like him because he's a tzaddik. Not I want to be like him because everybody stands up. But you see what a tzaddik looks like, that everyone stands up for a tzaddik. It's special because they respect what he represents. Say, I want to represent Torah. So that's a good thing. So harnessing the Yitzhara is part of being free, is that the Yitzhara is what's trying to enslave you. Your job is not only to not fall prey to him, but to harness him. Torah is the only way to do that. Torah does two things. It tells you to shut out the lies of the world around you. It tells you to shut out the lies inside of yourself. So now all the facts and the truth and the emes is on the table. And then, if it's all on the table, so now you know the truth of what you're supposed to actually be striving towards. And now the person's free because now he's moving in the direction that he's supposed to be moving. That's the goal of life. Now he's doing what's in his eternal best interest. So this is what a person can access on Pesach. This idea of breaking free of whatever is enslaving a person. Don't think you're not enslaved in some area. Unless you're a tzaddik, your Yitzhara has got you in certain areas. I gave examples last night. I gave this over to some people, and I said, a lot of people, let's give an example, like talking in shul. Somehow that became mutter to like 50% of the people that go to shul. Even though if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, it says that someone who talks in shul, gadol avono means so. His sin is too great to bear. He can't even carry his sin. It's so great to bear. He doesn't say that about any other sin. It's crazy. It's like the worst. Every posek and every one of the mafarshim that speak about talking in shul, like terrible, worst thing in the world. They all say it. So who in the world convinced? How does people just think it's okay? How? Because the Yitzhara tricked them. Because somehow he got them in that one area, like as a spider web. Oh, like that guy asked me a question, so I answered him. And then I see that guy doing it, and this guy's doing it, and this guy talks a little bit. So then the spider web suddenly gets into thick ropes, and now the guy's just Johnny Carson. He's interviewing people in the middle of davening, just like, usually he's a shy person. And he's like just talking around and walking around and like stopping here, stopping there, literally walking around shul and talking to people. That happens, and it's a shocking thing. It's like, where did that come from? You have something that in the books itself, in the Torah, they're saying it's super serious. The Mishnah Berurah says if you talk in shul and it causes lashon hara, and then eventually causes a fight, and eventually he says it's going to cause terrible things because it's impure speech by definition. It's bad, so it's going to snowball into worse things. anything that comes from that speaking, even if it happens to other people, like 20 other people, that speech eventually caused lashon hara and fights. It's all on that guy that talked in shul. That's what Mishnah Berurah says. He says like some crazy lashon, like I don't want to ever like know what's going to happen to that guy after he leaves this world. Mishnah Berurah says something like very intense, like I don't even know what to say about that guy.
Can you ask a shaila?
Yeah. So there's certain things, if you're a gabbai and you need to talk in shul for the sake of the davening. Anytime there's a tzorech hatfila, you can do it, right? You have to learn halachas. Certain parts are more stringent when you can talk, can't talk. You can ask a question or a one-word thing or a learning. There's different things that there might be dispensations at certain points in davening. But the general klal is there's no talking during davening almost across the board. There's very few places where there's no place where you can have a mundane conversation. Let's put it that way. There's certain places where you can have a Torah, say something in Torah. You can always ask a shaila if you need to. For those places. But it's a thing that somehow became mutter for all of the masses. That's a good area where someone's now a slave. Because something that is in his eternal worst interest, he's doing it all the time, and somehow he doesn't and it's something he can't break out of, or he thinks it's okay. So he has misinformation, or that guy's doing it. It's unclear what each person has. So that's just one example. Everybody has on their plate something that they know, and the Shulchan Aruch says you can't do this, and they do it, and they say, well, I'm just what do they say to themselves? I'm not on that level yet, or I'm incapable. What is that saying? I'm a slave to this thing. I'm enslaved to this thing. I cannot break out of this thing.
What is the punishment if you don't go to shul?
Well, it's better to not go to shul than to talk at shul.
Yeah,
there's no punishment. Going to shul is just it says hishtadel. You should try to go to shul. That's all it says. And you don't have to. You have to daven. You don't have to go to shul. If you go to shul, it's better. But if a person's going to talk, he might end up losing more than he gains.
But if you don't go to shul, you won't be guilty of talking in shul.
Yeah. So if a person can't control himself in shul, it's a real shaila. If someone says, so what you tell them, you can come to shul when you feel the need to talk, go to the lobby. No one said, by the way, when I say you can't talk in shul, it doesn't mean you can't talk in the building. It means you can't talk in the main heichal while we're davening. It means a person can walk out and talk all he wants when he's ready to control. Let's say a person can only concentrate for 10 minutes at a time without talking. Okay, there's people like that. So then they come in for 10 minutes and they go out. 5 minutes out, 10 minutes in, 5 minutes out, 10 minutes in. And maybe as they grow and they can concentrate for longer periods, and there's 20 minutes in, 5 minutes out, 20 minutes in, and then eventually they can handle it for 2.5 hours, or maybe they never will get to 2.5 hours, so they go out for a little bit. That's fine, no, nothing wrong with that. But if they feel the need to talk, they have to walk out. You can't talk in the shul. It's like, you just can't do that. It's like eating treif. It's like, and there's it's like, in terms of what the sources say, nobody says it's okay. Nobody even says it's not that bad. Every single source across the board screams about it. Like, this is as bad as it gets. Don't do this. This is the worst. You're being machti yourself. You're sinning for yourself. You're sinning for others. Worst thing. And people do it because they're slaves in that area. Because either misinformation, it's really the Yetzer Hara. He tricked them into thinking it was okay because other people do it. That's probably the easiest explanation. So every person has to look in their own life, either positive mitzvahs that they don't do. Shal Shuddis. A lot of people just skip Shal Shuddis, like, oh, it's like, for tzaddikim. No, Shal Shuddis is a chiyuv. Everybody has to have 3 meals a day. Do Shal Shuddis. Does it have to be bread? Not necessarily. Ideally bread, but it could be mazonos, it could be other things. But there needs to be a third meal. There's certain mitzvahs which is kind of more heter, we call it. People have convinced themselves that these things are okay. But that means that they're a slave in that area. Because the truth is, if they're Isaac b'Torah and they see everything the way that it's supposed to be, and the way that the truth tells you that it is, so then they wouldn't fall into these traps. So that is the goal of Yetzias Mitzrayim, was to take us to Har Sinai and give us the Torah to free us, because knowledge is freedom. Torah, not knowledge. Torah is freedom. That's the only thing that can make you free, because that's the only thing that's going to tell you what's in your eternal best interest. So on Pesach, the tefillah should always be to Hashem, help me make the Torah the primary guiding light in my life. Help me make the Torah the map and the blueprint of my life, because if it is, then you'll be free. If it's not, so then whichever area Torah doesn't define your behavior, you're a slave in that area. We're a slave. We're all slaves in those areas because freedom is Torah. Ein ben chorin el mi she'osek b'Torah. That's what it says in Pirkei Avos. Freedom is Torah. Without Torah, you don't have freedom. So the davening has to be, Hashem, make me free. Help me break off the shackles and the behaviors that have overcome me and the things that I can't control myself in. And then Hashem gives it to you. That's the chiddush of Pesach, is the energy's there. You have it for 7 days. Grab onto it for those 7 days, because it's use it or lose it. Otherwise, you got to wait till next year for it to come back into the world. But that's what's there on those 7 days, is this feeling of chayrus, and then you could be reborn, just like the trees and the plants and the flowers all come into life. So a person can come into bloom and be a new person if he taps into this freedom.